Welcome to the Popish Plot. I'm Nate.
I'm Jessica.
And I'm Mike.
And we're back with horrible ways to die.
And we're very excited about it.
Well, I am.
All right.
Up next, we have walled into a cave to die of starvation.
Yep.
This could also be, you could also be walled into a wall. So we're talking about various kinds of immurement.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
The involuntary anchorite, if you will.
Yeah. This is awful because you're going to have plenty of time. It's awful because you're going to have plenty of time to think about it as they're doing the walling in. But it's good in that it's not going to be the same kind of, physical pain and direct terror that, involved, being rent by a wild animal or, burned alive. But still, no, this is an awful, awful death. I guess the upside is you'll have plenty of time to pray and come to some kind of peace.
It's potentially a week long.
I mean...
Yeah, no, it's pretty awful.
In most cases...
Especially if they give you enough water that you don't die of dehydration.
Yeah, it's going to be more dehydration than starvation. But...
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean,
Unless, of course, you're there with an unknown number of people, possibly an angel and a dog, and then you're sleeping. Which is where I got the, out of the ones, because, of course,
If you're one of the sleepers of Ephesus, it's not so bad, but they weren't martyred, so... So this is... dying of dehydration is the exact opposite of dying of drowning. Dying of drowning, relatively quick. Dying of dehydration, just awful.
I mean, they're both about not having the correct amount of water around
Yes,
you.
yes, but the time scale is vastly different.
All right, so we move this one here.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Question. Should that one go there?
I feel like it's different because your way of death is going to be different.
All right.
There's not necessarily like lifting up.
Okay, you're not technically hanging. Sure. All right. So, following up, walled into a cave, we've got nailed to a wall.
Oh.
Yeah, this is
Worst honeymoon ever.
Worst honeymoon ever. Yes, absolutely. 100%.
This one has got... This one's kind of unique. In that it's got a little bit of a lot of things going on in it, right? Mm-hmm. You're nailed to a fixed object, like crucifixion, although you're not hanging from it. You've also got, given that the nails themselves are not going to be significant enough to, reasonably speaking, cause death unless they're nailing you through the abdominal cavity. You're also going to run into potential for dehydration, starvation. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So there's a certain amount of there's a certain amount of left in the desert all alone kind of a thing.
There is a question there. Yeah, are you going to bleed to death from your piercings, or are you going to die of dehydration / starvation / exposure? Mm-hmm. None good. Bleeding to death is the best. Again, you'll lose compared to the others. You'll lose consciousness relatively quickly.
This one,
depending on how badly you're bleeding.
This one, as far as like active suffering goes,
yeah, this could be awful.
Well, I was going to say actually, as far as active suffering goes, this one might not be so bad.
Oh, you're just kind of there.
You're just kind of there. If you don't move around too much, you're probably not going to irritate the wounds of the nails.
Mm-hmm.
However, there is the try staying in one position for really long and just not being stuck there. Just,
Yeah,
so almost invariably, just due to muscle fatigue, you're going to end up with some of the crucifixion.
It's gonna go. It's gonna take a little while. And the only upshot is that it's probably gonna go from bad to worse relatively quickly, but not necessarily at the end. It may go from being a bad situation to being a worse situation, somewhere around the middle. When your feet start to go numb because you've been standing there up against a wall for 9 hours straight, but they haven't been able to move.
But they're nailed down, so you can't readjust.
Yeah.
Ugh. Grisly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So don't have that done to you.
Don't have that. Don't get nailed to a wall. Period.
Okay.
Pro tip: don't get nailed to a wall.
Our next one.
Is it? Oh no, this isn't our final. We have
one last one. But our next one is one that we don't know exactly how this resulted in their death. So it's going to be a wild range of possibilities of how horrible of a death this is.
I mean, I see a couple of different ways that this one works. None of them are pleasant.
But we had one saint within the last year who was martyred via metal rods.
And because, again, we were talking about a lesser-known saint, there was no detail. So again, were these metal rods used as clubs? Were these metal rods used to pierce? Were these metal rods used for impressment? He was just crushed to death.
So yes, I mean, realistically, that's the three ways I could see you doing it. If they're pointy, you can run them through with them. Or if they're thick enough, you can just sort of smack them around until they're dead with them. And if they're really big metal rods, you could just lay them on top of them and just let the pressure do the job.
Or not even that big of metal rods, but just a bunch of them.
Maybe the metal rods hold up the rock.
You know, Giles Corey, more weight.
Oh, English law. Your family gets your property as long as you never say you're innocent or guilty.
As long as you don't enter a plea, your inheritors still inherit. Yep, your heirs still inherit.
That's a real culture for the I think it's called the Alfred plea. The one where you neither where you don't admit guilt. You simply acknowledge that you're going to be found guilty whether you were guilty or not, kind of a thing. Essentially a nolo contendere, no contest.
I do not think they had that in Salem, Massachusetts back in the witch trials, nor do I think pointing out that it doesn't matter if I'm guilty or not, you're going to find everyone a witch isn't going to be a valid argument for them.
They're certainly not going to like it. They're going to be like, well, that's certainly something a witch would say.
That's exactly the argument we would expect to hear from a witch.
Oh, man. Yeah, one of these Octobers will really have to do that.
In a related thing, we
metal
have,
rods.
We have another form of death.
And then the last on our list is a relatively broad category. Everything involving being tortured to death. Specifically thinking about things like the rack, cages,
Iron Maiden.
That's a myth.
Thing.
That's a myth.
I know, but still.
Sure.
It would have been a heck of a way to send somebody else out of
Black
this world.
Legend.
Of all the fake history of the fakest histories that the Victorians came up with, that is at least one of the cooler ones.
I was about to go and say that'd be a heck of a way to go out, and I'm like, no, that'd be a heck of a way to send somebody else out.
No, you definitely want to be the martyr, not the martyrer.
That's fair. That is a good solid point. Remember that,
Don't
students.
martyr others.
Don't be the martyrer. Be the martyr.
In emulation of our Lord Jesus Christ.
Unless, of course, you're being an unreasonable martyr. You know, one of those people who's always got to be put upon at the family get-togethers.
Yeah, no, not that kind of martyr. We're talking about being a legit martyr.
We're talking about legit
martyr
martyrs.
for Christ.
You have to be a martyr for Christ.
Okay, so being tortured to death, totally awful. Because, again, the whole point of torture is to inflict pain.
As much pain as is possible.
In this case, they will keep inflicting pain until you die of it.
Yes. And they're actually doing it in such a way as to put off that death as long as possible.
No, just the worst.
Yep.
Just, ow. Wow. So awful. The Iron Maiden, by contrast, would be a mercy. If it existed.
Yeah, probably. I mean, it would...
It does depend on whether it was slowly weighted to gradually, or they just slammed it shut.
Yeah,
because the slam was quick.
It also depends on if the spikes were intended to impale, or were simply intended to pierce.
But I've got to imagine that with that many spikes, from a fictional device, the blood loss would be pretty significant.
Probably, with the exception of the fact that in some cases, penetrating wounds actually staunch their own blood flow.
Indeed. So, yeah, torture to death. No. Just
no.
Please
That's
don't.
just a no. Okay, so
Yeah, the rack, awful. Being stretched, no.
On that note, there was the dunking chair that they used for witches.
Mm-hmm.
That one was truly terrible.
Sometime we'll actually do a whole episode just on witch trials.
I mean, I can see why it's going to go for around Halloween, simply because it will largely be Protestant witch trials, because even the Spanish Inquisition was like in 1492. None of these people are witches. They're just weird old ladies. Stop sending them to us.
Oh no! Hey, when we do this, we won't whitewash it.
I do though like the point
but
that
Salem
this
was totally Protestant.
that this was the Spanish Inquisition, who most of the rest of the world are like, oh, those guys were the worst. It's like, no, they got sent witches, and they're like, would you please just stop? She's not a witch. Just because you don't like her doesn't mean she's a witch.
She may be a word that rhymes with witch, but that's not reason to kill her. Give this a like, subscribe to our channel, ring the church bell to be notified the next time a plot is uploaded. Please don't get martyred, and until next time.
Please don't martyr anybody else.
Definitely don't do that.
And until next time, remember to live your faith.
Love your faith.
Share that love.